Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first webinar in the UDC Libraries webinar series, AI in Context. This session is Uses and Limitations of Gen AI. My name is Megan Kowalski, and I am the Outreach and Reference Librarian, and I'll be handling the logistics for today's events. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to drop them in the chat as we get through the series, and we will have time for questions both recorded and unrecorded at the end. Today's session is being brought to you by Glenn Benedict, so I'm going to hand things off to him. So take it away, Glenn.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is the first webinar in our series. So we're going to talk briefly on kind of some, basics, some basic information, some terms that you'll need to know for further webinars. So we'll be touching on a lot of stuff in this webinar, but everything that we're going to be talking about is going to be expanded in some way by the later webinars, and I'll try to point those out as we go along. So today, like I said, we're just going to talk about a few things. We're going to go over kind of briefly what is AI. I'm sure you've been hearing a lot about it last couple of years, especially its use in academia. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what are the applications and advantages of using AI, what are the limitations that AI has, and what are some ethical concerns about the use of AI. And just before we begin, just as a disclaimer, that everything we're going to be talking about, can change very quickly. This is a field that we have seen a lot of sort of new advancements, sort of almost leapfrogging over the last previous advancements in this field. So, things change very quickly. And so, we're kind of going with some broad concepts here. But just be aware that this is a topic where there are a lot of changes. There's new products, new ideas constantly coming out. So like I said, the first thing we want to do is just sort of define what we're talking about when we say AI. So AI stands for artificial intelligence. And you'll notice on this slide, I have put intelligence in quotation marks. And it's important to realize that the systems and the tools that we have now are not intelligence as we would sort of define it. They're not, there's things that they do very, very well, but they are not intelligent in the same way that we would consider, another human being to be. AI is not making decisions in the way that a human makes decisions. Although there are similarities in terms of the way, where there are similarities in the way that AI processes information, the primary difference is that it processes that information much, much quicker than a human could. So there are things that it can do that a human can't, but there are things that humans can do that AI can't. And it's important to recognize where those strengths and those limitations are. So primarily what AI is, in terms of what we're talking about today, is it's the ability to sort of recognize and generate patterns. And this is something that, again, humans do all the time. So one of the things that makes humans sort of special and unique in terms of our place in the animal kingdom is that we are very, very good at recognizing patterns. So if you people that see faces in in an emoji, in just two dots in a line, and humans can see a whole face there. That's something that's special about people. And AI does that as well. That is what AI fundamentally does. And so if you think about sort of the initial implementation of AI tools, if you think about the autofill or auto suggests features on your phones when you're texting or when you're doing a search in a database, spell checking and grammar checks are sort of, it's where you're teaching the AI how to recognize these patterns. And then more sophisticated tools like we've seen on several social media platforms have AI that automatically summarizes long discussion threads, or you also have this feature in academic databases that can summarize articles or research for you, all the way up to things like chatbots. which in many cases can be very sophisticated and can actually be hard to detect a human on the other end of that of a chat than from an AI tool. And again, all these systems work from a computer, a processor of some kind, uh, you know, recognizing and generating patterns. So if you're concerned about AI, just remember that that is fundamentally what is happening at the base level. It's very sophisticated, but that is fundamentally what it is doing. Um, what we're talking about today is what's called generative AI, which is AI that is used, it is taught, it's what's something called trained on information. So it's taught how to recognize patterns. In this case, it's text, images, video, audio, and then it can then take that how it's been taught by the sort of the data that's been fed into the system to then produce something new. If you've heard the term LLM or large language models, these are specifically about AI that have been trained on quite a lot of big amounts of data. Um, so that's one element of AI is sort of uh, there's sort of two inputs that go into generating something from generative AI. You have the data that it's trained on, which happens in the background. Then there's the prompt, which is what the user uses um, in order to get the AI to generate um, the product that they want. And we're going to have a whole webinar just on prompts, how to do more efficient prompts, how to do, basically how to best tell an AI tool what you want it to produce. And the last term I want to just talk briefly about is hallucination. This is a term for false information or any kind of strange outputs that you might get from an AI tool. In the same way that humans hallucinate, hallucinating in a human is a sign of our ability to recognize patterns um, that's too sensitive. So if you see something out of the corner of your eye and your brain kind of fills in, that there's somebody standing behind you, or if you have any other kind of visual or uh, a visual illusion, that's all those all take advantage of the fact that your brain is constantly trying to recognize patterns. And in the same way, AI can produce false information. It can make up stuff. And that's a side result of, again, this system, which is not intelligent in the same way that you and I are, um, using the information it's been trained on to make something new that isn't true. Or, it could be a false citation for an article. It could be information that isn't true or doesn't exist. And so those are things you have to keep an eye out for. So there's many different types of AI tools. Probably the most famous one that people have probably heard of is called ChatGPT. Here at UDC, there are a couple tools that the university subscribes to, specifically Microsoft Copilot and Grammarly. But there are many others. We do have a LibGuide that kind of summarizes multiple different tools and kind of what they're used for. Many of them offer, there's a free tier of use, which is sometimes restricted in terms of how many outputs you can produce in a certain day, or it might have some other restriction on it. And also, we also summarize what their privacy policy is, because that is a concern about using some of these tools. So I do encourage people to go check that out if they have a chance. So what can you use AI for? So there's a lot of different ways of using AI in an academic setting. It's a great tool for brainstorming ideas. So if you have a broad topic you think you want to do research on, or you want to see kind of what other ideas are out there, brainstorming is a great way to get to kind of new ideas sparking. Like I said, it's being used in academic databases to help to summarize articles. So in addition to the abstract in an article, you can use a summary tool to quickly see if this is an article that you would want to use in your research. Um, you can use it to create templates and study tools, revise your writing. So again, going back to something like Grammarly or the even more basic, grammar and spell check that's built into things like Microsoft Word. It can be very helpful as a translation tool, and it's very helpful for uh, helping to make uh, academic writing through any of these other methods more accessible to either to yourself or making your own work more accessible to a broader audience. And so the important thing to remember about AI is that you want to be using it to support your own learning, research, and work, but it's not a replacement for it. And so, as we talk a little bit further, you'll kind of see some of the problems with relying solely on AI as a tool. And so remember that it is a support tool. It does not replace you either as a student or as a researcher or as a faculty member. So what are some of the limitations then of AI? So one of the big ones is the data that the AI is being trained on. Because this is a machine, it's only able to output based on what has been input into it. And in many cases, the data that AI is being trained on can replicate existing biases or discriminatory attitudes or beliefs that whether intentionally or not, because it doesn't really know how to weight data that it's being trained on for those sort of things. There are issues of consistency. Two people can go to an AI tool, they can do the same prompts into the tool, and they might get different results. And some of those results may be correct, some of them may be incorrect, or they may not be exactly what the person is looking for. So be aware of that as well. Errors that AI can create. So you see on the side here, I asked Google's AI overview tool to tell me why I shouldn't trust Google's AI overview tool, and they very helpfully provided me an answer here. We kind of looked into some of these examples that they gave of bad responses, and in one case, this third and fourth bullet points actually are the same issue. The Wisconsin Alumni Association website actually lists alumni of, I believe it's the University of Wisconsin, who have the same names as US presidents. So this page was something that an AI tool was being trained on. So when somebody entered a prompt about Andrew Johnson, it took that tool and misunderstood what that page was saying and said that instead of saying several people named Andrew Johnson attended the University of Wisconsin and earned a degree, it said that the actual US President Andrew Johnson earned several university degrees, decades after he died. So things like satire or sarcasm, again, because it's not intelligent, it doesn't necessarily understand the difference between that and actual factual information. And again, talking about we also have issues of biases and the potential for hallucinations from that data set as well. So what are some of the ethical concerns about AI? A big one that is still kind of in discussion is copyright, both in terms of the ability of a creator of some kind who uses AI in their work, if that work can be copyrighted, and then also the use of copyrighted works in training AI models. So for example, if I am an artist and I have a very distinctive style, and images of my work are then fed into an AI tool, somebody can come along and make a new piece of art in my style. If a person did, then the question is how close, if another human did that, deliberately copying their style, that style may or may not be able to be copyrighted depending on if the final work is intended to uh, impersonate my work, for example. So there are questions regarding copyright, both in terms of the inputs and the outputs of AI tools. User privacy is another big concern, again, because it's being trained on a lot of data. That data could come up or be exposed when somebody does this research. And whether or not somebody can opt out of having their own personal data used in AI training. That's deep fakes you may have heard of. That is a situation where somebody uses an AI tool, usually an image generator or a video generator, to produce, in many cases, explicit content with the image of another person without their consent. So making a fake pornographic video that appears to use the image of a celebrity, for example. This is actually something that's being debated in Congress right now. There's actually pretty strong bipartisan support for regulations addressing this particular use of AI. So just be aware that this is a concern. Again, we're talking about the accuracy of information, whether or not the outputs that you're getting from the AI, are you able to fact check this? Issues of cheating and plagiarism. It is definitely a tool that can be used for either of those things, especially the etiquette and surrounding the citing of AI tools and AI assistants in doing research or doing homework assignments is, again, another hot button topic related to within academia. There is actually going to be a whole webinar addressing issues of cheating and plagiarism coming up. So I encourage you to sign up for that. As well as other ethical issues regarding AI. We also have one for how do you evaluate the output from an AI tool, or how do you evaluate an AI tool to begin with, and also one on using AI to do research. So be aware that we'll be touching on a lot of these topics in more detail in those later webinars. There is a big concern about the environmental impact of AI. AI uses a lot of computing power, which means that there needs to be these AI companies need to invest in a lot of servers and other computing devices, which need to be kept cool, which draws a lot of electricity. And doing even a simple AI prompt uses a lot more energy than doing an equivalent just Google search used to do. So it's the concerns surrounding that are sort of piling up. And so it is important to address that as well. And then finally, the equity of access to AI tools. Like I mentioned, most of these tools do have a free level. But beyond that, the ability for an individual to pay for either more uses or more powerful uses of these tools can price it out of range of a lot of individuals if they don't have access through another organization, like, for example, a university or their place of business. So that is a concern as well. So there is some equity of access, like most of these products do have a free tier. But beyond that, there is sort of concern about what's called the digital divide. So between lower income household and higher income households, there's already an equitable gap in terms of how they're able to access the internet and other sorts of online resources, and AI is just another sort of step in that. So this is our contact information here at the UDC library. We encourage you to reach out anytime. We're available through email, online chat. You can set up appointments either for in-person or over Zoom. So I am going to go and we'll see if we have any questions.
Thank you, Glenn. That was great. If you have a question about this or any of our upcoming webinars, please don't hesitate to drop them in the chat or raise your hand and I can unmute you. So I'll start with one while we wait to see if anything comes in. So Glenn, as you were putting this webinar together, what did you find to be the most useful way you could use AI?
Something that I thought just kind of using it as a like I said, like brainstorming. Like for example, that one search I did for the Google AI overview, just asking it Google AI overview, why should I not trust you? Or like what are some problems with the Google AI was I wasn't planning on using that particular uh a screenshot from that result. I just did it. I was curious to see what the results were. Um, I haven't used AI a whole lot in my own professional work. The one I have used it to replace, um, we mentioned templates. So sometime I had to send an email inviting someone to speak as on a panel as part of a conference. And so that's something I would Google, up a form letter or a form, email to make sure I'm wording this correctly because I want to make sure that I'm not, I'm being respectful to the other person. And, so that's something I would normally I would sort of Google, I would copy and paste that template and that would change some of the results. This time I just used AI to ask, write me a sample email inviting someone to speak at a conference. And then I took that and I just adjusted it slightly and I sent that out. And that was, something that falls into that kind of like, this is something I would normally be getting from somewhere else and adapting for my own purposes. And I tested out using the AI tool and I was pretty pleased with the results.
Great. And we did have a question come in, and it is Dolly, the AI image creation app, available at UDC? I know for that is not something UDC currently pays for. So while you can access it while on campus, it is not something we have an institutional license for. If that is something you're interested in, I know there is a lot of talk about adapting AI at the institutional level. So that is something I would presume that the president's office is looking into because these tools are not cheap. It's also, many of them are multi-use. And since we are a Microsoft campus, I think a lot of stuff is getting pushed more towards what can you do with Copilot. That said, you can still use it as an individual on campus, but it is not something the university currently pays for. Yes, Jacob has added UDC subscription to Copilot allows you to generate images. Yes. And I will say, playing around with those AI art generators is a lot of fun. But I will say there is a caveat of they have been trained on copyrighted materials. So there is going to be a copyright battle along the lines of who gets credit for this, simply because the original creators were never reimbursed for their art being used to train these models. So that is something to keep in mind. And we will be discussing that later in our webinars coming up for the ethical issues around AI. Are there any other questions? Added in the comments. Also, Blackboard has an AI image generator for module and content images. Yes. And I will say, Jacob Hopkins, our information literacy librarian, has put together a wonderful AI help guide. The link to that is in the chat, and many of the tools we talked about today are listed in that guide. And we note where UDC has an institutional subscription so that you know which ones you have more robust access to. Right. I'm not seeing any other questions come in. I do want to say thank you for attending today and thank you for the wonderful presentation, Glenn. This session was recorded. I'm going to stop the recording in the moment in a minute, in case anyone has any questions they prefer to ask unrecorded. But this recording will be posted to our YouTube within about an hour, and the link will be sent to everyone who has registered. So thank you for attending.